No one gets assigned to Base Meridian unless someone wants them forgotten. Caleb Walker heard that sentence from a dockhand who would not meet his eyes, and by the time his transport cut through the dust veil above the asteroid, he understood why. The base did not rise from the rock so much as cling to it, a black iron structure bolted into a dead stone 6 miles wide, turning slowly in the dark like something too tired to fall. No welcome lights marked the landing strip. No flag moved in the airless silence. Only red guidance beams swept across the shuttle windows, scanning his face, his badge, his pale skin, the faded scar near his jaw, and the service record that had followed him farther than any person ever had. Caleb sat alone in the rear seat with his duffel between his boots, listening to the hull tick as the shuttle cooled. 34 years old, former Earth Defense Mission Specialist, trained in field engineering, survival logistics, and crisis extraction. That was what the file said before the sealed sections began. It did not say that he hated metals. It did not say that he still woke up hearing a child counting backward in a smoke-filled stairwell on New Denver Station. It only said disciplinary transfer, failure to follow withdrawal order, command confidence reduced. A neat way to describe saving 17 civilians when the people above him had already decided they were too expensive to rescue. The ramp dropped with a hydraulic sigh. Cold poured in first, thin and metallic, smelling faintly of ozone and sterilized dust. Caleb stood, pulled his canvas jacket tighter over his gray flight suit, and stepped onto the landing deck. His boots hit the surface with a hollow clang that seemed too loud. 2 security officers waited at the bottom of the ramp, their helmets polished black, their posture stiff in the way people stood when they had been told not to ask questions. One of them checked his tablet, then looked up. "Walker Caleb Aaron?" "Depends who's asking," Caleb said. The officer did not smile. "Base Meridian confirms receipt of human operative." "Receipt." Caleb looked past him toward the main hangar, where cargo drones moved in straight lines under strips of white light. Everything here was quiet, efficient, and cold. Even the people seemed packed away in layers of procedure. "Good to know I arrived in one piece," Caleb muttered. The officer handed him a thin access card without touching his glove. "Report to Briefing Room 3. Commander Harlan is expecting you. Do I get quarters first?" "After assignment." "Coffee?" The officer hesitated, as if humor required clearance. "After assignment." Caleb gave him a tired nod and walked toward the entry tunnel. The doors opened before him in sections, each one scanning his retinas, breath, pulse, and implanted service chip. Inside, Base Meridian hummed with buried power. Vents whispered overhead. Blue-white lights reflected off brushed steel walls. Somewhere deep below, a reactor throbbed every 4 seconds, steady as a second heart. Caleb passed engineers, medics, pilots, and council observers in silver-trimmed uniforms. Conversation softened when he came near. Eyes flicked to the stripe on his sleeve, the one that marked him as transferred command rather than active honor. He had seen that look before. Not hatred. Worse. Calculation. By the time he reached Briefing Room 3, his hands had gone still. That was an old habit. When the world got uncertain, Caleb stopped wasting motion. The door recognized his access card and slid open. The room beyond was narrow, dark, and colder than the corridor. A long table split the center. At the far end stood Commander Harlan, a square-jawed man with silver hair and the kind of clean uniform that had never been forced through a maintenance crawlspace. Beside him hovered a mission display, rotating slowly in pale blue light. "Mr. Walker," Harlan said. "Not lieutenant. Not specialist." Mr. Caleb noticed. "Commander. You arrived 6 minutes late. Your dockhand gave me a speech. Then he spoke too much." Harlan tapped the display. Stars collapsed into a single region of black space marked with warning rings. "You have been selected for Mission Pale Lantern." Caleb set his duffel beside the chair but did not sit. "Selected by who?" "Joint Security Council." "That answers paperwork, not motive." Harlan's mouth tightened. "Your record indicates a pattern of independent judgment under pressure," Caleb almost laughed. That what we're calling it now? We are calling it useful. The display shifted. New text appeared in clean military font. Mission Pale Lantern. Human operative accepted. Alien asset pending. Caleb stared at the last line. The room felt smaller. Asset? He asked quietly. Harlan did not look away. A non-human specialist will be assigned to you. She is biologically compatible with the mission environment and essential to navigation beyond the dead signal zone. She has a name? Another pause. Too small for most men to notice. Caleb noticed. Saris Vera, Harlan said. Aurelian. Female. 29 by Earth conversion. Highly intelligent. Difficult. You are not required to befriend her. That's a relief. I usually start with basic respect and see where it goes. Harlan's eyes cooled. You are required to complete the mission. Caleb looked again at the word asset, glowing softly above the table like a stain no one wanted to wipe away. Before he could answer, a chime sounded at the door. Harlan straightened. The lights dimmed by 1 degree, almost imperceptible, as if the room itself knew something important was about to enter. The door opened. 2 escorts stepped in first. Between them walked a woman Caleb had never seen and somehow knew he would remember for the rest of his life. Her skin was pale blue with a faint silver undertone, like moonlight caught beneath ice. Her hair fell straight and white to her shoulders. Her golden eyes moved once around the room, missed nothing, and landed on Caleb without warmth. A narrow neural restraint circled one wrist, black against the luminous blue of her skin. She stood tall, silent, and proud, but Caleb saw the smallest tremor in her fingers before she hit it. Harlan said, Mr. Walker, this is your assigned alien partner. Caleb did not look at the commander. He looked at her wrist, then at her eyes. Ma'am, he said softly. For the first time since he arrived on Base Meridian, the room went completely still. The first mistake Base Meridian made was thinking Caleb Walker knew how to receive a person like cargo. Saris Vera stood beneath the briefing room lights with her chin lifted and her golden eyes fixed on him, not pleading, not afraid in any way she would allow the room to recognize. The neural restraint around her wrist gave off a low blue pulse every 3 seconds, soft enough to ignore, cruel enough to notice. Caleb noticed. He noticed the tiny marks where the band had rubbed against her skin. He noticed how the 2 escorts stood too close, as if proximity could turn dignity into obedience. He noticed Commander Harlan watching him instead of her, measuring the exact moment when a decent man learned what kind of place he had been sent to. You will address the operative by designation, Harlan said. Aurelian navigation asset, attached to Mission Pale Lantern. Caleb looked at Saris again. She already has a name. The air changed. Not loudly. No alarms. No movement. Just a quiet tightening in the shoulders of every officer in the room. Saris tilted her head a fraction, studying him as if he had spoken a dead language by accident. Names imply legal personhood under Joint Command classification, Harlan said. This individual is under conditional custody. That sounds like a lot of words to avoid saying prisoner. One of the escorts shifted his weight. Harlan did not blink. Mr. Walker, your reputation for difficult judgment is precisely why you were chosen, but do not mistake that for permission to disrupt protocol. Caleb let the sentence settle. The reactor beat somewhere under the floor. 4 seconds. Again. 4 seconds. It felt less like a machine now and more like a warning. Harlan slid a transparent tablet across the table. Text filled the glass in neat white lines. Assignment confirmation. Custodial transfer. Mission compliance. Biological synchronization waiver. At the bottom, a blank space waited for Caleb Walker's thumbprint. Sign the receipt, Harlan said. Caleb did not touch it. Receipt is for equipment. For operational purposes, that is accurate. Saris spoke then, her voice low, smooth, and colder than the air vent above them. Do not perform outrage for my benefit, human. Your commanders enjoy ceremony. Mine enjoy silence. The outcome is usually the same. Caleb turned toward her. The words were sharp, but he heard the exhaustion underneath them, hidden deep, buried like heat under ice. I am not performing. All humans perform, she said. Compassion. Humor. Moral discomfort. You decorate control until it feels less ugly. Harlan allowed himself the faintest smile. As you can see, she is fully briefed on interspecies behavioral patterns. No, Caleb said softly. She is briefed on being disappointed. Saris did not answer. Something moved behind her eyes, fast and gone. Harlan tapped the tablet with 2 fingers. The mission file expanded in the air above the table, projecting a map of the dead signal zone, a black region where the stars seemed to vanish around a pale moon labeled Vespera 12. Mission Pale Lantern will depart in 8 hours. The target site is beneath the surface of Vespera 12. No relay contact beyond 11 seconds. No remote extraction. No external command once you cross the boundary. Caleb read the data without moving his face. His training worked even when his temper did not. Then why send only 2 people? Because large teams vanish there. Small teams sometimes return. Sometimes. Enough. The projection shifted again. Saris Vera appeared beside the moon in thin blue text. Aurelian. Bioadaptive spatial perception. Genomic access marker confirmed. Risk profile restricted. Caleb saw Saris look away for the first time. Not down. Never down. Just away, toward the wall, where the steel reflected her like a ghost trapped underwater. Genomic access marker, Caleb said. Explain that. Harlan clasped his hands behind his back. Certain Aurelian traits interact with the target environment. That is not an explanation. That is a curtain. It is all you are authorized to know. Caleb picked up the tablet at last. Harlan relaxed by half an inch. Then Caleb scrolled to the last page. His thumb stopped over a single line written smaller than the rest. In the event of mission failure, alien asset may be force-activated by assigned human operative or command override. The room seemed to lose temperature. Caleb read it again, slower. Force-activated. Saris watched him now, her expression unreadable, but the pulse in the restraint had quickened. Blue. 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 Activated how? Caleb asked. Harlan's voice became almost gentle. That made it worse. Under circumstances that will likely not occur. That was not my question. It is the only answer you need. Caleb set the tablet down without signing. The sound was small, a clean click of glass on metal, but every head turned toward it. Then I am not accepting custody. Harlan's face hardened. You are accepting a mission. I can fly a bad route. I can fix a dying engine. I can walk into a dead zone with bad odds and worse coffee. What I am not doing is signing for a person like she is a damaged crate. Saris stared at him. The golden in her eyes caught the overhead light and held it there. For one strange second, Caleb saw not an alien asset, not a mission condition, not a political problem, but a woman who had trained herself to expect nothing and had just been inconvenienced by hope. Harlan leaned forward. Mr. Walker, you are here because no other operative profile survived the compatibility screen. Refuse, and she goes to someone less troubled by procedure. That landed. Caleb hated that it landed. The room went quiet enough for him to hear the tiny hum of the restraint on Saris's wrist. He looked at her. Do you want this mission? Saris gave a thin, humorless smile. Want is a civilian luxury. That was not my question. For the first time, her voice lost its edge. Only slightly. Only for one word. No. Caleb held her gaze, then pressed his thumb to the tablet. Harlan smiled. Saris's face closed. Then Caleb spoke before either of them could mistake him. I am signing as mission partner, not custodian. Change the word in the file, or I do not leave this room. The smile died on Harlan's face. Somewhere beneath base meridian, the reactor beat again, patient and heavy. Saris looked down at the word asset glowing on the tablet. Then she looked back at Caleb, and for the first time, she seemed less certain that she understood humans at all. Hope was not listed in the mission protocol, which was probably why everyone in the room looked nervous when Caleb Walker brought it in anyway. Commander Harlan stared at the tablet for a long moment, his jaw working as if the word partner had a bad taste. Then he reached down, entered his command code, and changed the line himself. Alien asset became alien mission partner. It took less than 3 seconds. It changed the air more than any speech could have. Saris Vera watched the letters rearrange in pale blue light, and the pulse in the restraint around her wrist slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. Caleb saw it because he had spent half his life noticing the small things that officers missed. A loose bolt before a hull breach. A tired pilot before a bad landing. A person going still because they had learned stillness was safer than fear. Harlan slid the tablet back toward him. There. Satisfied? Caleb pressed his thumb to the glass. No. But I am ready. Saris gave him a look that almost became a question, and then decided against it. Harlan stepped away from the table. You depart in 7 hours and 42 minutes. Before that, the two of you must complete neural synchronization. Without it, Vespera 12 will tear your navigation apart before you cross the outer field. Neural synchronization, Caleb repeated. That sounds like a polite name for something unpleasant. It is a compatibility procedure, Harlan said. You will share limited sensory bandwidth. Balance, spatial orientation, short-range instinctive response. No memory transfer, unless the system misfires. Saris looked at the commander then. It misfires often. Harlan ignored her. Calibration Bay 2. Now. The escorts moved first. Caleb picked up his duffel and followed, keeping one pace behind Saris instead of in front of her. She noticed. Of course she noticed. The corridor outside Briefing Room 3 had grown busier, but no one came too close. Workers stepped aside as the alien woman passed, their eyes dropping to the restraint, then climbing quickly away as if dignity could burn. Caleb wanted to say something. He did not. Sometimes kindness spoken too early sounded like ownership. Calibration Bay 2 sat 3 levels below the hangar, carved into the asteroid rock where the walls sweated cold and the lights hummed at a frequency just high enough to make teeth ache. The chamber inside was circular, 30 feet across, with 2 metal recliners facing one another beneath a ring of suspended instruments. Cables hung from the ceiling in neat black bundles. Monitors glowed along the walls. The floor smelled of antiseptic and warm copper wiring. A technician in a white pressure coat approached with 2 trays of adhesive sensors. He did not look at Saris when he spoke. Human operative in the left chair. Aurelian unit in the right. Caleb stopped. The technician looked up, confused by the silence. Caleb said, Partner. The technician swallowed. Aurelian partner in the right chair. Saris turned away before Caleb could read her expression. She sat with perfect control, back straight, hands resting on the arms of the chair as the technician attached sensors to her temples, wrists, and the fine luminous ridges beneath her collar line. Caleb took the left chair and forced himself not to flinch when cold pads touched his skin through the open seams of his flight suit. The machine woke in pieces. A soft tone. A rise of light. A ring turning overhead like a quiet halo built by people who did not believe in mercy. Remain still, the technician said. Do not resist cross-sensory input. Do not speak unless instructed. Emotional interference may create feedback. That going to be a problem? Caleb asked. For humans, Saris said, eyes forward. It usually is. Good thing I am known for being easy to manage. Her mouth did not smile, but one corner considered it. The system chimed. Synchronization at 5%. Caleb felt pressure behind his eyes, then a strange tilt in the room, as if gravity had leaned 3 inches to the left. He gripped the chair. Saris did not move, But he felt something from her anyway, not a thought, not a word, more like temperature. Cold starlight. Deep water. A loneliness so disciplined it had become architecture. His breath caught. Across from him, Ceres stiffened. Her golden eyes widened, and Caleb knew she had felt something too. Not his pain exactly. Not his memories in full. Just the shape of them. Smoke in a stairwell. A small hand gripping his sleeve. An order in his ear telling him to leave. His own voice, younger and hoarse, saying not yet. The monitors flickered. Synchronization at 28%. The technician frowned. Heart rates are diverging. Mr. Walker, reduce emotional response. I am sitting in a chair, Caleb said through his teeth. That is as reduced as I get. Ceres was still watching him. The contempt in her face had thinned into something more dangerous than trust. Curiosity. You went back, she said softly. When command told you not to. Caleb looked at the restraint on her wrist. Some orders sound clean because someone else has to live with the dirt. For a moment, the only sound was the ring above them turning faster. Then Ceres closed her eyes. The cold in Caleb's chest shifted. He felt her standing in a white chamber somewhere far from here, younger, surrounded by voices that measured her worth and usefulness. He felt her learning not to ask for rescue because rescue always came with a price. He felt her deciding pride was the last room no one could enter without permission. The machine screamed a warning tone, sharp but brief. The lights flashed amber. The technician stepped back. Unauthorized emotional overlap detected. Caleb looked at Ceres. Ceres opened her eyes. And neither of them looked away. The warning tone faded, but the silence it left behind felt louder than any alarm. Caleb Walker sat strapped into the synchronization chair with sensor pads cooling against his skin, watching Ceres Vera as the amber lights above them returned to white. The technician hurried between monitors, pretending not to be shaken. Commander Harlan stood behind the observation glass with his hands folded behind his back, his face unreadable and his patience visibly thinning. Synchronization had stabilized at 42%, which the system called sufficient, and every instinct in Caleb called a bad idea wrapped in official language. Ceres removed the sensors from her temples herself before the technician could touch her. Her fingers were steady now. Too steady. Caleb knew that kind of control. It was not calm. It was a door locked from the inside. You saw something, she said without looking at him. Caleb peeled a sensor from his wrist. So did you. That was not permitted. A lot of things happen around me that paperwork does not approve of. She turned her golden eyes toward him, and for 1 second the stereo bay disappeared. No commander. No restraint. No mission clock. Just the strange afterimage of her loneliness still pressed somewhere behind his ribs. You carried disobedience like a family trait, she said. My father called it a maintenance issue. Was he correct? Usually. Something almost warm crossed her face, then vanished before it could be claimed. Harlan entered before either of them could say more. You leave in 58 minutes. Your vessel is ready. The Helix shuttle will carry you to the boundary beacon, and from there you proceed under Pale Lantern Protocol. Once you cross into the dead signal zone, communication windows will last no more than 11 seconds. Caleb stood slowly, joints stiff from the neural link. Plenty of time for goodbye speeches. There will be no speeches, Harlan said. Only success. Ceres stepped past him toward the door. That is what failed empires always call hunger. Harlan did not respond, but the muscle in his cheek moved once. The launch hangar waited 3 levels above, a cathedral of metal and cold vapor where the mission shuttle sat under white floodlights. It was smaller than Caleb expected, only 40 feet nose to tail, matte gray, narrow-winged, and built more for silence than comfort. Pale Lantern was painted along the side in letters so thin they looked embarrassed to be there. Ground crew loaded sealed cases into the rear compartment. Oxygen cells, field rations, thermal blankets, 2 emergency shelters. 3 locked containers Caleb had not been allowed to inspect. He inspected them anyway with his eyes. Saris noticed. "Suspicion is efficient," she said. "I am starting to enjoy your species. Give us time. We get annoying. You already are. Then we are ahead of schedule." The corner of her mouth moved again, smaller than a smile, but real enough that Caleb stored it away without meaning to. They boarded through the rear ramp. The cabin smelled of new insulation, engine coolant, and recycled air that had not yet learned how to be lived in. 2 pilot seats faced a curved windshield. Behind them, narrow racks held their gear. The space between everything was too small, built to remind 2 people that mission compatibility did not mean comfort. Caleb took the left seat. Saris took the right. Her hands hovered over the alien navigation interface, a smooth black panel that brightened at the nearness of her skin. The pale blue lines beneath her fingers answered like sleepy rivers waking under ice. Caleb watched the display. "That thing read you? It listens. There is a difference. For your machines, rarely." The hangar doors opened. Beyond them, space waited black and quiet, scattered with hard stars and the distant curve of Vespera 12. The shuttle lifted without ceremony. No cheering. No salute. Just clamps releasing, engines humming, and Base Meridian dropping behind them like a secret no one wanted to own. Caleb guided them out on manual thrust until the asteroid base shrank to a cluster of lights pinned to stone. Saris adjusted their course by inches, not touching the stick, only breathing with the interface. Through the shared synchronization, Caleb felt a faint pull behind his eyes whenever she sensed gravity bending around invisible debris. It was uncomfortable. It was also beautiful. "You navigate by feeling space," he said. "You repair engines by listening to metal," she replied. "Do not sound impressed." "I am not." You pause before answering. Your species overvalues pauses. Your species hides truth inside jokes. Caleb glanced at her. "Fair." The boundary beacon appeared 2 hours later, a skeletal tower floating alone at the edge of the forbidden region, blinking yellow once every 11 seconds. Past it, the stars blurred and thinned, as if light itself had become cautious. Caleb opened the channel to Base Meridian. Harlan appeared in flickering blue. "Final confirmation. Proceed." Caleb waited. The signal began to tear at the edges. "Mr. Walker," Harlan said, "remember your authorization parameters." Caleb looked at Saris, then back at the fading transmission. "I remember people better." The channel died. The shuttle crossed the beacon line, and every normal sound changed. Static crawled over the speakers. The navigation grid folded into gray interference. Saris inhaled sharply, one hand pressing against the interface as the blue lines under her skin brightened. Caleb felt the shift through the link, a cold pressure opening around them, wide as an ocean and empty as a locked room. Then something brushed the hull. A soft scrape. Another. Then dozens. Caleb brought up the exterior cameras. Pale shapes drifted along the shuttle, thin and translucent, like ribbons made of glass and moonlight. They clung to the wings for a heartbeat, then slipped away in sudden, coordinated streams. "Tell me those are local weather," Caleb said. Saris leaned closer to the screen, and all the color left her expression. "They are not coming toward us." The creatures fled past the shuttle in shining waves, all moving away from Vespera 12. A low vibration rose through the floor, deep, patient, and enormous. Saris whispered, "They are escaping what is underneath the moon." The moon did not welcome them with storms or fire. It welcomed them with silence, which somehow felt worse. Caleb Walker brought the shuttle down through a pale field of dust that rose in slow sheets beneath the landing thrusters, each grain glittering like powdered glass in the floodlights. Vespera 12 stretched beyond the windshield in every direction, white, flat, and dead, with low ridges cutting across the horizon like scars under snow. The gravity sat at just under Earth normal, light enough to make every movement feel delayed, heavy enough to remind the body that falling still mattered. No wind moved. No beacon answered. No machine on the shuttle could agree on where they were. The navigation screen rotated through 3 different maps, then gave up and displayed a gray circle. Saris Vera kept one hand pressed against the alien interface, her eyes half closed, her blue-silver skin glowing faintly along the veins of her wrist. Through the neural link, Caleb felt her pain before he saw it. A sharp pressure under the ribs. A cold ringing behind the teeth. A pull from below, as if the moon had a hand around her name. "Saris," he said, keeping his voice low. "Talk to me." She opened her eyes slowly. The gold in them had gone bright and distant. "Something beneath the surface knows I am here." That is not the kind of sentence pilots enjoy hearing after landing. Then your pilots lack imagination. The words were steady, but her hand trembled against the console. Caleb unstrapped and moved through the cabin, checking oxygen, thermal systems, and field packs. His gloves brushed one of the locked containers from Base Meridian. The seals still refused his access code. He did not like things he could not open, especially when they belonged to men like Harlan. Saris stood, then nearly lost balance. Caleb reached out but stopped an inch short of touching her arm. "May I help you?" She looked at his hand, then at his face. The question seemed to trouble her more than the pain. "You ask permission for assistance. Usually works better than grabbing people. Among Aurelians, permission is given by rank. Among humans, it is supposed to be given by the person." She studied him for one breath, then placed her fingers lightly on his sleeve. Not weak. Not dependent. Just enough to accept the offer without surrendering herself to it. Together they stepped out onto Vespera 12. The surface crunched softly under Caleb's boots. His suit displayed red -18 degrees Fahrenheit, breathable only through filtered tanks, radiation low, electromagnetic distortion rising in slow waves from beneath them. Their helmet lights cut tunnels through suspended dust. 40 yards ahead, a line of dark stone broke the white plain. At first Caleb thought it was a ridge. Then the dust shifted under his boot and exposed a carved edge. Too straight. Too smooth. He knelt and brushed it clean with his glove. Symbols glimmered under the powder, not painted, not engraved, but grown into the stone like frozen light. Saris made a sound he had not heard from her before. Not fear exactly. Recognition. "This architecture is older than my recorded bloodline," she whispered. Caleb looked up. "You can read it?" "No." She swallowed. "But it can read me," the ground answered. A soft blue pulse traveled outward from beneath her boots, racing through buried lines until the entire plain began to glow in a pattern miles wide. What Caleb had mistaken for empty terrain became a map. Streets. Towers. Rings. Doorways. An entire city hidden under white dust, breathing light through the skin of a dead moon. His calm crackled for half a second, filled with static and a broken fragment of Harlan's voice, then died. Saris stepped forward as if pulled by a tide. Caleb stayed beside her, matching her pace. The symbols brightened when she passed. The buried city opened one corridor at a time, panels sliding back without sound, revealing stairs descending into a soft blue dark. Warm air rose from below, carrying a scent like rain on hot stone. Impossible on a moon that had no weather. Caleb turned his head toward her. "This is why they wanted you." Saris did not deny it. The restraint around her wrist pulsed once, answering the city in a color that made her flinch. "Aurelian children are taught that our ancestors survived because we were useful. Navigators. Translators. Living keys to places other species could not touch. I thought it was old shame dressed as history." Her voice thinned. "I was wrong." They descended nearly 200 feet before the passage opened into a chamber so vast Caleb's helmet light vanished into it. Walls curved upward into darkness, covered in moving script. At the center stood a circular gate, taller than a grain silo, made of black metal that reflected no light. Across its surface, 3 words formed in English through his translator. "The Mercy Engine." Caleb read them twice. "That sounds almost hopeful." Ceres's face was pale under the glow. In my oldest language, mercy has two meanings. She looked at the gate as it woke for her. One is kindness. The other is a swift ending. The shuttle comms suddenly burst alive, louder than before, cutting through the chamber with Base Meridian's cold authority. Harlan's voice came in broken but clear enough. Proceed to activation. Human operative authorized to compel compliance. The words echoed off the ancient walls and returned smaller each time. Caleb looked at Ceres. She stood very still, proud enough not to ask, tired enough to know what the order meant. Then the locked container on Caleb's belt clicked open by remote command. The thing inside the container was not large enough to look dangerous, and that made Caleb Walker hate it immediately. It rested in a nest of gray foam, no longer than a flashlight, smooth and black, with Base Meridian command codes crawling across its surface in thin red lines. His helmet display identified it before he touched it. Bureau Compliance Key. Emergency Authorization Device. A machine built to turn another person into a procedure. The chamber around him breathed in blue light. The Mercy engine waited at the center, silent, patient, enormous. Ceres Vera stood between Caleb and the gate with her wrist restraint pulsing faster now, each flash answering the device on his belt as if both had been waiting their whole lives to meet. Harlan's voice tore through the comm again, broken by static but sharp enough to cut. Mr. Walker, you have your authorization. Apply the key and proceed. Caleb stared at the device. It reflected his face in a warped black curve, making him look colder than he felt. What does it do? He asked. Ceres did not turn away from the gate. It makes refusal temporary. The words settled into him like ice water. That is not an answer. It is the cleanest one. She lifted her restrained wrist, not offering it, simply acknowledging the truth of it. The key will synchronize with the band. My biological response will open the gate whether I consent or not. I will remain conscious. That is considered humane. Caleb felt the old anger rise, slow and quiet, the kind that did not need a raised voice to become dangerous to orders. And you knew. I suspected. Why did you come? Ceres looked at him then. In the ancient light, her pale blue skin seemed almost transparent, silver under the surface, every hidden pulse made visible. Because someone would have been sent with me. If not you, another human. If not another human, a machine. I preferred the one who called me ma'am. The line should have sounded bitter. It did not. It sounded tired. Caleb reached into the container and picked up the compliance key. It was warm, as if it had been held by invisible hands. The Mercy engine reacted at once. Lines of blue script moved across the walls. The floor gave a low vibration through his boots. The gate recognized the tool. Harlan recognized the pause. Do not make this personal, Walker. Caleb almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, but because men like Harlan always revealed themselves with the same sentence. As if cruelty became reasonable when spoken from a distance. It was personal before I landed, Caleb said. You just filed it wrong. Your orders are clear. So was the evacuation order on New Denver. Static hissed. Harlan went silent for half a breath. Caleb kept his eyes on Ceres. She stood very still now, prepared for the worst with the dignity of someone who had never been allowed to expect better. That hurt him more than fear would have. Fear asked for help. Dignity like that expected abandonment. Caleb stepped closer, slowly, making every movement visible. Ceres, may I see the restraint? Her golden eyes narrowed. For what purpose? Maintenance. You intend humor now? No. The chamber hummed around them. I intend bad paperwork. For a moment, she only looked at him. Then she extended her wrist. The black band pulsed against her skin. Caleb did not grab her arm. He cupped his gloved hand beneath it without closing his fingers, letting her rest there if she chose. She did. Barely. That was enough. He turned the compliance key over and found the service seam where any military engineer would hide one, because even immoral machines still needed repair. He opened his field kit with his other hand and pulled a thin diagnostic wire from the lining. Saris watched every motion. That is not the activation port. I know. If you bypass command authorization, Base Meridian will classify you as compromised. They already did that years ago. I kept the habit. They will say I influence you. Caleb connected the wire. The restraint flashed red. Saris drew a breath through her teeth but did not pull away. Then I will say you asked me a question, and I finally gave the correct answer. Harlan's voice returned, louder now. Walker, step away from the alien. Caleb ignored him and fed a maintenance loop through the compliance key, not into Saris, but into the restraint's own command memory. The band resisted. It searched for permission from Base Meridian. Caleb gave it an old Earth defense repair code, 3 false temperature readings, and a simulated battery fault. The restraint believed the lie because machines were easier to fool than people. Its red pulse softened to yellow. Then white. Then nothing. The band opened with a small click and fell into Caleb's palm. No explosion. No dramatic sound. Just a circle of black metal no longer pretending it had the right to hold her. Saris stared at her bare wrist as if freedom were a language she had once known as a child and forgotten under pressure. Caleb set the compliance key back in the container and closed the lid. Why? She whispered. He looked at the gate, then at the dead restraint in his hand. Because you said no without saying it. The Mercy engine brightened. Not from command. Not from force. From her. Saris stepped past Caleb and placed her free hand against the ancient gate. This time, the light that answered was not the color of captivity. It was soft, gold, and alive. Across every broken comm channel, Base Meridian heard the same ancient voice wake beneath the moon. Consent recognized. Mercy sequence unlocked. Base Meridian did not shout when it betrayed them. It simply changed their names in the system. Caleb Walker felt it happen before he saw it, a soft red blink in the corner of his helmet display, quiet as a door closing behind him. Mission operative became compromised human element. Alien mission partner became priority retrieval subject. The words floated over the blue-gold chamber while the Mercy engine breathed awake around them, ancient walls filling with light that moved like slow water under glass. Saris Vera still had one hand on the gate, her free wrist bare for the first time since Caleb had met her. The place where the restraint had been looked pale, almost fragile, and somehow that small circle of unmarked skin made the entire buried city feel less dead. Harlan's voice returned through static, flat and careful now. Walker, stand down. You are experiencing cognitive contamination from unauthorized alien contact. Caleb looked at Saris. That is a fancy way of saying I made up my own mind. Your command structure disagrees. My command structure is having a rough day. Saris turned from the gate, and the gold light followed the movement of her fingers. They are afraid. Caleb picked up the fallen restraint and slipped it into a pouch on his belt. Good. Fear is the first honest thing I have heard from them. The chamber shifted beneath their boots. Far above, somewhere through 200 feet of old stone and lunar dust, the shuttle sent a warning tone across Caleb's suit. New craft had crossed into the dead signal zone. 3 of them. Small. Fast. Moving in formation from Base Meridian. No weapons lock appeared. No open threat. Just the colder language of recovery teams, sealed orders, and people trained to make a problem disappear without ever raising their voices. Saris saw the data reflected in his visor. They will not negotiate. Then we will be bad hosts. This city is not safe. Caleb looked around at the glowing walls, the impossible gate, the floor symbols waking under their feet. Neither was the base. She studied him for half a second, then nodded once. The kind of nod that meant trust, though either of them was ready to call it that. The gate behind her opened without sound. Not wide. Just enough to reveal a passage descending deeper under Vespera 12, warm mist curling from its edges. Caleb's suit read the air twice and gave him 2 answers that could not both be true. Breathable. Unknown. Ancient. Your moon has opinions, he said. It is not my moon. It seems attached to you. So are your complications. There. They moved into the passage as the gate sealed behind them, leaving the recovery signal to fade above. The tunnel curved downward in a slow spiral, its walls lined with thousands of small crystal nodes. Each one lit as Ceres passed. Caleb walked half a step behind her, not because she needed guarding, but because the corridor narrowed in places and he had broader shoulders. The thought was ordinary. The moment was not. Through the neural link, he felt the city pressing gently against Ceres, asking questions without words. It wanted her memories. It wanted the shape of her refusal. It wanted to know why a living key had opened a door without being forced. Then it turned toward Caleb. The pressure hit behind his eyes. He stopped, one hand bracing against the wall. The tunnel tilted. For a breath, he was not under a moon. He was back in the evacuation smoke of New Denver, hearing a child count backward to stay brave. 10. 9. 8. The old order crackled in his ear. Leave them. The Mercy engine listened to the memory as if it were a prayer. Ceres caught his arm before he fell. Her grip was strong, cool through both layers of fabric and suit mesh. Caleb. She used his name like she had been saving it. He blinked the corridor back into place. I am fine. Humans say that when they are not fine. We also say it when we are busy. She did not let go. The engine is testing you. It can take a number. It already has. Ahead, the tunnel widened into a bridge of black stone crossing a deep interior shaft. Below, a hidden city glowed in rings, streets and towers buried inside the moon like a memory no one had been brave enough to open. Above them, the first recovery craft entered the access chamber. Caleb's display flickered with forced commands, remote shutdown attempts, suit compliance requests. He stripped them out one by one with quick finger movements on his wrist panel. They are trying to lock my suit. Can they? Ceres asked. They can try. The bridge lights dimmed. A voice from the ancient city spoke through the stone, not loud, not mechanical, almost sorrowful. Pursuit detected. Consent bearer endangered. Compassion bearer unstable. Caleb looked at Ceres. I liked it better when it only said one impossible thing at a time. Ceres stepped onto the bridge and placed both hands against the glowing rail. Open a shielded path. The city did not answer. The recovery team above requested access. Base Meridian command codes poured into the system like cold rain. For one terrible moment, the ancient lights flickered red. Then Ceres looked back at Caleb, and the fear she had refused to show earlier finally appeared, small and honest. It recognizes command authority. Caleb crossed to her, pulled the broken restraint from his belt, and placed it on the rail between them. Then give it something older than command. Ceres understood. She laid her bare wrist beside the broken band. Caleb placed his palm beside hers, not touching, close enough for the city to read the choice. The Mercy engine pulsed gold. The red vanished. Above them, every sealed door between the recovery team and the lower city closed with a gentle finality. No crash. No harm. Just refusal made architecture. Ceres exhaled, and through the link Caleb felt wonder break through her discipline like dawn through a shudder. It chose us, she whispered. Caleb looked down at the glowing city below them. No. It recognized what we chose. Behind them, the bridge carried them deeper into the moon, away from orders, away from labels, toward the truth Base Meridian had buried and the silence that had waited centuries for someone merciful enough to wake it. The lower city did not look abandoned when Caleb Walker and Ceres Vera reached its heart. It looked like it had been holding its breath. Gold light moved through towers buried inside the moon, crossing from window to window as if unseen hands were waking lamps in rooms no one had entered for centuries. The bridge carried them without sound over streets made of black glass, past silent balconies, curved doorways, and plazas where thin streams of blue mist drifted upward in the low gravity. Caleb kept waiting for the place to feel ancient in the way ruins usually did, broken, dusty, mournful. But Vespera 12 felt present. Listening. Remembering. Ceres walked beside him with her bare wrist held close to her chest, not hiding it exactly, but protecting the absence of the restraint the way some people protected a fresh wound. Through the neural link, Caleb felt the tremor under her calm. Not fear of the city. Fear of hope. That was worse in some ways. Fear expected pain. Hope asked for proof. Ahead, the bridge ended at a circular hall nearly 100 yards wide. There were no consoles. No throne. No control chair for generals to sit in and pretend distance made decisions clean. At the center floated a sphere of dark water, suspended in the air, turning slowly without spilling a drop. Around it hung thousands of tiny lights, each one flickering with a color Caleb could almost feel against his skin. Some were blue with sorrow. Some green with wonder. Some white and soft as breath on glass. Ceres stopped at the edge of the hall. "This is not an engine room," she whispered. Caleb looked at the floating sphere. "Then what is it?" The ancient voice answered from everywhere and nowhere, gentle enough to make the question feel sacred. "A memory chamber." Ceres went still. Caleb felt her shock through the link, cold and bright. "The Mercy engine is a memory chamber?" he asked. "Mercy is the memory of another being carried as if it matters," the voice said. The words moved through the hall, and every hanging light trembled. Caleb thought of Harlan, of the locked containers, of the clean language in the mission file. Force activation. Compliance. Retrieval. All those careful phrases built to keep a person from seeing the person in front of them. He looked at Ceres. She was staring at the sphere as if it had just spoken in the language she had needed all her life and never heard from anyone with power. The recovery team remained sealed somewhere above, their signals faint and frustrated, but Base Meridian still pushed commands into the city. Red lines crawled across Caleb's visor. Harlan's voice tried to break through the interference. "This site is under Joint Security Authority. Do not proceed without command authentication." The city let the message echo once, then folded it into silence. Ceres stepped forward. The floating water darkened. Inside it, shapes appeared. Not clear images at first, only impressions. A child's hand touching a wall of light. A council chamber filled with beings of many species. A planet seen from orbit, beautiful and covered in storm bands. Then the images sharpened into something Caleb understood without a translator. The civilization that built this place had not vanished because it lacked intelligence. It had not fallen because its machines failed. It had measured life by usefulness for so long that one day it forgot how to stop. The Mercy engine was the apology they left behind. Not a device to punish enemies. Not a treasure to win wars. A test. A warning. A record of what happened when power became more important than personhood. Ceres lifted a hand toward the sphere, then hesitated. "It wanted my bloodline because my ancestors helped build it." The water shimmered. Consent bearer recognized. Then the lights shifted toward Caleb. Warmth touched the center of his chest, not physical, not exactly, but unmistakable. Compassion bearer recognized. Caleb swallowed. "I am not anything special." Ceres turned to him, and her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "That may be why it trusts you." The sphere opened like an eye. Suddenly Caleb was inside a storm of memories, but none of them swallowed him. He saw Ceres as a child standing in a white chamber, learning to keep her face still while adults praised her usefulness. He saw himself in smoke, kneeling so a terrified child could climb onto his back. He saw the dockhand at Base Meridian looking away because looking too closely would have required courage. He saw Commander Harlan signing orders with clean hands and colder words. Then the city saw him too. Every small decision. Every hesitation. Every time he had been afraid and done the decent thing anyway. The Mercy engine did not celebrate strength. It recognized refusal. Refusal to reduce. Refusal to obey cruelty. Refusal to call a living soul a tool. Above them, every channel opened at once. Base Meridian. The recovery craft. The sealed command rooms. The observation glass where officers stood with polished silence. The ancient voice carried through all of it. Human compassion recognized. Aurelian consent recognized. Command authority rejected. Harlan's voice came back thin, almost human in its disbelief. What have you activated? Caleb looked at Saris. She looked back, no longer an asset, no longer a key, no longer a prisoner shaped like a mission objective. Just Saris Vera, standing in gold light with her wrist free and her eyes full of stars. Caleb answered quietly, knowing the base could hear every word. Not what you came here for. The sphere brightened, and the hidden records of Base Meridian began to unfold across the sky of the buried city, one truth after another, patient as sunrise. The truth did not explode out of the Mercy engine. It unfolded quietly, which made it harder for anyone to dismiss. Across the buried city beneath Vespera 12, the gold lights became windows, and in each window Base Meridian appeared as it had truly been. Not the clean fortress Caleb Walker had stepped into hours earlier. Not the necessary outpost described in council reports. Something smaller than that, and colder. A place where people had learned to hide fear behind procedure. The records drifted through the air in calm, readable streams. Custody orders. Altered mission files. Consent waivers signed by officials who had never met the lives they were authorizing. Names changed into categories. Partners changed into assets. Questions changed into security risks. Caleb stood beside Saris Vera and watched officers on the open channels fall silent one by one. The recovery team above them did not advance. Their suit cameras had received the same transmission. Their commanders had too. So had every relay within 11 seconds of the dead signal zone, and then every relay beyond it, as the Mercy engine found pathways older than any human map. Harlan's voice came through last, stripped of command by the weight of what everyone had seen. Walker, you do not understand the political consequences. Caleb looked up at the floating records. His reflection appeared in one of them, pale, tired, unshaven, still wearing the same gray flight suit he had arrived in. He did not look like a hero. He looked like a man who had finally reached the end of what he could tolerate. I understand the human consequences, he said. Saris turned toward him. In the gold light, her eyes were no longer guarded in the same way. There was still discipline there, and pain, and the old Aurelian pride that refused to bend just because freedom had arrived. But something had changed. She no longer looked like someone waiting to be used. She looked like someone deciding where to stand. The Mercy engine spoke once more, softer now. Memory delivered. Judgment belongs to the living. Then the city began to sleep again. Not die. Sleep. Lights dimmed by rings, towers fading into the blue dark, streets folding their glow beneath the glass. The floating sphere lowered until it touched the floor without a ripple. The bridge behind them turned pale, leading back toward the surface. No guard stopped them when they climbed the long passage. No door sealed against them. Above, Vespera 12 waited under the same white dust, silent and cold, but the shuttle beacon now blinked steadily in the distance. The recovery craft hovered a quarter-mile away, their lights low, their crews watching. One officer opened a channel and removed his helmet before speaking. He looked younger than Caleb expected. Mr. Walker, he said, voice uncertain. We have received revised orders from the Joint Council. Commander Harlan has been relieved pending inquiry. You and Saris Vera are requested back at Base Meridian as protected witnesses. Caleb glanced at Saris. Requested, he said. That is new. Saris looked at the officer. And if I refuse? The officer swallowed. Then we are instructed to provide transport wherever you choose. For a moment, no one moved. Then Saris gave the smallest nod Caleb had ever seen, but it carried more authority than every command in Harlan's file. We will return, she said. Not because we are summoned. Because we will speak. The flight back was quiet. The dead signal zone still bent the instruments. Static still crawled over the glass. But Caleb no longer felt the same cold pressure in his chest. Sarah sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, bare wrist visible under the soft cabin light. The broken restraint rested on the console between them. Neither of them touched it. Neither needed to. When Base Meridian came into view, its red perimeter beams were gone. White docking lights guided them in. People lined the hangar, not cheering, not celebrating, just watching with the stunned hush of a place forced to recognize itself. Caleb stepped down the ramp first. Saris followed half a step later. No escorts moved toward her. No one called her asset. In the hearing chamber 3 hours later, the council asked Caleb why he had altered the mission, rejected authorization, and returned without the weapon they had expected. He could have given them engineering language. He could have quoted protocol. He could have told them about the city under the moon and the ancient machine that measured mercy better than any living government. Instead, he looked at Saris. She stood beside him in a plain silver coat someone had found in the medical wing, her posture straight, her wrist free, her face calm enough to make the entire chamber feel ashamed. Caleb turned back to the council. She was never the mission, he said. She was the person the mission forgot to see. No one answered. Outside the observation windows, Vespera 12 turned slowly in the dark, carrying its sleeping city beneath the dust. Saris reached into her pocket, took out the broken restraint, and placed it on the polished table. The sound was small. Just metal touching stone. But it traveled through the room like a verdict. Caleb did not complete the mission they gave him. He saved what the mission was built to erase. And in a galaxy ruled by power, one tired human had reminded them that mercy was not weakness. It was the last honest form of strength.